You've made a wrong call before. Not because you were careless, not because you didn't have the information, but because your brain, at the exact moment it mattered most, was running on a physiological system that was never designed for what you were asking it to do. And here's the part nobody at the executive level will ever say out loud. Most high-stakes decisions in 2026 are being made by brains that are chemically incapable of making them well at that moment. I'm going to show you exactly how to fix that, not with a mindset shift, not with a framework you will forget by tomorrow, with the specific 4-minute Stanford-backed neurological sequence that moves your brain physically, measurably, from survival processing into what neuroscientists call executive clarity. And when this video ends, if you apply what I show you, the decision sitting unresolved in your head right now will have a different answer than it had this morning. We take the breath so we can grow the life. That is the mind take principle. And by the time we're done, you will understand exactly why those 8 words are true on a biological level, not as motivation, as mechanism. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is going to reframe something you've believed about your own judgment for years. Let me show you a morning that I'm almost certain you've lived. You wake up and the phone is already lit. 17 notifications, a Slack thread that exploded at 2 a.m., an email that needs a decision by noon. And before you've had a single glass of water, before your nervous system has had 1 second to regulate, you're already in reactive mode. I know that morning well, not because I researched it, because I lived a version of it that cost me badly. A few years ago, I was advising a founder on a major organizational restructuring, high pressure, tight timeline, a board expecting answers by end of week. I'd been running on 4 hours of sleep, back-to-back calls, and a cortisol level I couldn't have named but could absolutely feel. And I gave advice that felt right in that moment. Confident, decisive, clear. It was the wrong call. Not slightly off, wrong, in a direction that took months and real resources to correct. And the devastating part? The right answer was available to me. I had the data, I had the experience, but the biological state I was operating from made it completely inaccessible. That is the invisible catastrophe nobody at the top talks about. Here's the science behind why it happens, and this is your first takeaway, so write it down if you need to. Chronic cortisol, the stress hormone your body releases under sustained pressure, physically reduces the gray matter density in your prefrontal cortex. That's the region governing consequence assessment, long-range thinking, and the calibration of risk versus reward. The most important decisions of your career are increasingly being made by a brain that is measurably smaller than it used to be. This is not motivational language. This is structural neurology. And here's where the pattern I call the reactive trap closes around even the most capable people. The reactive trap isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of preparation. It's what happens when driven, intelligent professionals mistake constant motion for strategic progress. They stay in action. They keep executing. They keep deciding. But the system driving those decisions has been hijacked by urgency, and they've confused speed with sharpness. The irony is brutal. The faster the market moves, and in 2026, with AI executing at neural speed around you, the more dangerous it is to decide from a reactive state. Because you're not just making a bad call, you're making a bad call at machine speed. Here is the distinction that changes everything, and I want you to hold on to it as we go deeper. The problem was never your judgment. The problem was the physiological state from which you were exercising it. That difference is not subtle. That difference is the entire game. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Stress is bad. I already knew that. Here's what you didn't know. There is a way to biologically reset that system in 4 minutes. And I mean 4 minutes precisely. And the science behind it comes from Stanford. Let me show you why this works. For decades, the standard professional advice was sleep on it. Major decision? Give it a night. Let your subconscious work. And while there's real biology behind that advice, sleep does consolidate memory and recalibrate emotional intensity, but it was designed for a world that moved at human speed. We no longer live in that world. The environment you're operating in don't give you until morning. They give you until the next data release, the next competitor move, the next board notification. You need a reset mechanism that works in minutes, not hours. And here's where it gets interesting and slightly uncomfortable, because the sequence I'm about to describe is not meditation. It is not breathing exercises in the way you've probably dismissed them before. What I'm describing is a deliberate, targeted stimulation of a specific neural pathway that has a documented, measurable effect on your executive function within 4 minutes of activation. The structure is called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body. It originates in your brainstem and runs through your chest, your heart, your lungs, your gut. It is the primary two-way communication highway between your body and your brain. And when it is deliberately activated, when you achieve what researchers call high vagal tone, it produces a measurable shift in your cognitive processing mode. Here's the thing nobody tells you about stress. When your nervous system is in threat response mode, what neuroscientists call sympathetic dominance, your amygdala is the loudest voice in the room. The amygdala is extraordinary at keeping you alive under physical threat, is categorically bad at reading a balance sheet, evaluating a partnership structure, or deciding whether to exit a market. But when you shift into what's called ventral vagal state, through the specific 4-minute sequence, the amygdala stands down. The prefrontal cortex re-engages, and something that most high performers have buried under years of urgency, dormant intuitive intelligence comes back online. Intuitive intelligence is not mysticism. It's the pattern recognition your brain has built from thousands of hours of real experience stored below the threshold of conscious processing. In a calm neurological state, that deep library is accessible. In a reactive state, it's locked behind a wall of cortisol you can't even see. The 4-minute sequence does not make you smarter. It makes the intelligence you already possess available to you at the moment you actually need it. Now, before I walk you through the exact protocol, I need to tell you something that most people will resist. The biggest objection I hear from high-performing professionals when I introduce this sequence is, I don't have 4 minutes before a decision. And that objection itself is the problem, because that response, I'm too busy to reset, is directly a symptom of the reactive state you're trapped in. The person who was too busy to reset is exactly the person making decisions from the wrong operating system.
You are not someone who doesn't have 4 minutes. You are someone who hasn't yet realized that those 4 minutes are the most valuable ones in your professional day. That's the identity shift this protocol requires. And it's the one that separates the people who use this from the people who understand it but don't. Let me now show you exactly what the 4 minutes look like. 4 minutes, 4 phases, exact sequences. Let me walk you through each one. Phase 1, the sensor anchor, 60 seconds. This is how elite operators step out of the information storm before a critical decision. You stop engaging with data. You stop processing inputs. You deliberately redirect conscious attention to physical sensation. Here is exactly what you do. Pick one surface your body is in contact with right now. Your feet on the floor, your back against the chair, the weight of your hands in your lap. Feel the pressure, the texture, the temperature difference between your skin and the surface. Not metaphorically, literally track those physical details with your full attention for 60 seconds. What this does neurologically is interrupt the ruminative loop your prefrontal cortex gets caught in under cognitive load. By redirecting conscious attention to sensory input, you're placing a circuit breaker on the noise. The loop breaks. The system begins to downregulate. I've worked with founders who use this in the 2 minutes before entering a negotiation, not because they're being spiritual about it, because they've measured the difference in their own performance and they know it's real. Phase 2, the breath architecture, 90 seconds. Now we activate the vagal pathway directly. And the research here is specific. The ratio matters. You breathe in for a count of 4, you breathe out for a count of 7, and you repeat that 5 times across 90 seconds. The extended exhale is the mechanism. It activates the parasympathetic branch of your autonomic nervous system. It sends a signal directly to your brainstem, which is monitoring your respiratory pattern in real time, every second, that you are not in danger, that it is safe to down-regulate. As it does, cortisol drops, heart rate variability increases. The prefrontal cortex begins to re-engage. This is not relaxation for its own sake. This is a state change executed with clinical precision. Phase 3, the observer protocol, 60 seconds. This phase addresses something specific to high-stakes professional decisions, the tendency to personalize the stakes in a way that distorts your data processing. When you're facing a decision with enormous consequences, a restructuring, a market exit, an acquisition, your nervous system experiences it as a threat to your identity, not just your business. And that personalization creates stack that corrupts your assessment of the actual information in front of you. The observer protocol is simple. You take the decision and you describe it to yourself in third person. Not should I take this deal, but is this deal aligned with the company's 3-year positioning? Not should I let this person go, but does this role match this person's actual capability profile? You are no longer the person with skin in the game. You are a trusted consultant reviewing someone else's situation. And that 1 degree of psychological distance, literally restructuring the grammar of how you're thinking about the problem, allows you to see the data instead of your feelings about the data. This is how the most consistently effective decision makers I've studied hold high-risk situations, not as personal threats, as objective information sets to evaluate. Phase 4, the clarity query, 30 seconds. In the final 30 seconds before you re-engage with the decision, you ask yourself one specific question. What would I recommend to someone I deeply respect in this exact situation? Not what should I do? What would I recommend? Because recommendation activates your evaluative intelligence without triggering the defensive circuitry that personal stakes fire. Whatever answer surfaces in those 30 seconds, before your analytical mind has time to build a case against it, is almost always aligned with what the data was already telling you. You just couldn't hear it over the noise. That answer is your decision. 4 minutes, 1 sequence. And the difference in the quality of what comes out on the other side is not incremental. It is categorical. Theory without a deployment plan is just content that felt good in the moment. So let me tell you exactly when and how this gets used in a real professional workflow in 2026. Window 1. Before every high-stakes meeting. 4 minutes before you enter any room, physical or virtual, where a significant decision will be made, you run the sequence. Not afterward, the process. Before, to calibrate. Because the quality of your thinking inside that meeting is determined before you walk into it, not during. I've worked with founders who've built this as a non-negotiable calendar block. 12 minutes of sequence time before every quarterly board session. They don't view it as time lost. They view it as the most high-leverage 12 minutes of their quarter. Window 2. Before AI system reviews. This one is 2026 specific. Many of you are now working alongside AI systems that execute trades, approve customer decisions, or trigger operational pivots on your authorization. The human in that loop, you, is the judgment layer that is supposed to catch what the system cannot. If you're giving that authorization from a reactive nervous system, you are not the oversight the system needs. You are a rubber stamp with stress hormones attached. Running the sequence before you evaluate AI outputs means your review is an actual review, not just a physiological response in professional language. Window 3. Before any pivot decision. A pivot decision is any call that changes the direction of something significant. Market repositioning, resource reallocation, leadership changes, strategy shifts. These are precisely the decisions where fear-based impulse is most expensive. The sequence creates enough neurological space for your actual strategic judgment to drive, rather than your anxiety about consequence. Here's a number that should reframe how you think about this daily practice. Research on decision quality in executive populations shows that making decisions consistently from a regulated neurological state across 12 months produces approximately 5% better outcomes. On average, 5% sounds modest. Compound 5% better decision-making across every significant call you make in a year. Fewer misaligned hires, fewer missed market windows, fewer partnerships built on desperation rather than alignment. The operational value is not 5%. It is transformational. Because you are not just gaining 5% on the wins, you are preventing entire categories of catastrophic mistakes. One fear-based strategic pivot avoided can protect millions in runway. That is the decision compound effect.
And that is why this sequence is not a productivity habit. It is an asset protection mechanism. The most sophisticated system in your company's tech stack is still the human nervous system making the final call. The question is not whether you have good judgment. The question is what state you're in when you exercise it.
I want you to hold two people in your mind for a moment. Same credentials, same experience level, same access to data, tools, and teams. Professional A operates the way most driven people do in 2026. Continuously reactive, chronically loaded, making decisions from whatever physiological state they happen to be in when the moment arrives. They are working harder than anyone they know. More meetings, more data reviewed, faster execution, and they're exhausted in a way that sleep no longer fixes. Professional B has one thing Professional A doesn't. Not more intelligence, not better information. A 4-minute sequence they run before every high-stakes moment. Same decisions, same pressures, different neurological starting point. At the end of month 1, the gap between them is barely visible. At the end of year 1, they are not in the same conversation anymore. The 5% better decisions compound. The avoided catastrophic calls compound. The relationships built from clarity instead of reactivity compound. The opportunities that were always there but invisible through a cortisol-filtered lens, those compound too. The grind path burns you down to your last reserves and asks you to keep producing from empty. The clarity path builds something those reserves cannot build. A track record of judgment that compounds over time. And this is what I want to land with, because I think it's the most important reframe in everything I've said today. The most competitive thing you can do in 2026 is not work more hours. It is work from a better state of mind. Speed is no longer a competitive advantage. AI makes speed available to everyone. What AI cannot replicate, not now and not in any near-term timeline, is the quality of human judgment at the center of the system. That is still the moat. That is still the differentiation. And that edge is not built in strategy decks. It is built in the 4 minutes before you open one. We take the breath. That is the sequence, the pause, the 4-minute reset before the moment of decision, so we can grow the life. That is every downstream outcome, the stronger hire, the smarter pivot, the partnership that actually aligns, the career that compounds instead of burns. That is the mind-take principle. And now you don't just believe it, you understand the biology of why it works. Here's the only thing I'm asking you to do before you close this video. Pull up the most loaded professional decision currently sitting unresolved in front of you. The one you've been circling, the one where you can't tell if what you're feeling is a real signal or just accumulated noise. Before you decide anything about it, before you reply, approve, decline, or move, run the 4-minute sequence exactly as I described it. Phase 1, 60 seconds, sensory grounding, physical contact surface, full attention on sensation. Phase 2, 90 seconds, 4 count in, 7 count out, 5 cycles. Phase 3, 60 seconds, observer protocol, third person, consulting framing. Phase 4, 30 seconds, clarity query. What would you recommend to someone you respect? Then come down to the comments and tell me what shifted. I read every single comment on this channel, not as a courtesy, but because what you share shapes the next video we build. The patterns in what you bring are how I know what to address next. Your decision is the data that makes this better for everyone who comes after. Hit subscribe. If you want to go further, if you want the complete executive decision framework with the full protocol map, the cognitive state tracking tool, and access to the Mind-Take private community where these ideas get practiced in real professional situations, the link is below. That is where theory ends and the real work begins. And if something in this video changed the way you see your own judgment, share it. Not for the numbers, because there is someone in your network running the reactive trap right now, making decisions that are costing them more than they'll ever be able to trace back to this moment. Give them the 4 minutes. I'm Dr. Silas Kincaid. This is Mind-Take. We take the breath so we can grow the light.